So my title then is Calling the Light, Rekindling the Spark Within the Darkness. And of course, there's a range of attitudes, isn't there, in the pagan and magical worlds about how much emphasis should be placed upon this concept of the light. And some spiritual and healing traditions are very light focused, but other pagans and very often witches prefer to embrace the darkness and perhaps its more difficult and challenging aspects and to work with it, because of course without darkness there can be no light, just as without death there can be no life. But even for those of us who choose to work with the darker aspects of magic and the spirit worlds, the purpose of doing so is very often to seek knowledge and develop wisdom, which of course is in itself a kind of enlightenment. And at this time of year, almost every tradition or spiritual path has some kind of celebration of the return of the light into the darkness. And quite a few of these I mentioned in my Yuletide talk for you last year. And of course, that's still available. So I've been very careful this year not to repeat any of the material that I used a year ago. But I was thinking that, we've been through such a long period of dark and difficult times, of illness, death, restrictions, loss and personal tragedies, and as well, of course, as the disruption of our communities and the kind of support they offer, which certainly in the pagan communities in Norfolk, we really have felt this whole thing of not being able to meet up with people in person. We were lucky enough to have the Bracanti, of course, which was wonderful. And it was so lovely to see so many people again there that we hadn't seen for, over a year. But we still do miss that real support of the communities. I see Chris says she looks better in the dark. I'm not quite sure that I'd go along with that, Chris. You look just fine in the dark or in the light. So I wouldn't say that at all. Hello, Annie. Lovely to see you. But of course, we've reached a point now where so many of the people that I know, at least, they're exhausted, they're fed up. A lot of people are carrying a weight of grief. And many are angry or frightened. And even people who haven't suffered personally over the last couple of years are still feeling the effects of this kind of oppressive atmosphere. And it's really hard in some circumstances to get motivated and even to feel festive. So that's why I came up with the title. When Chris asked me to do the talk, I thought, oh yeah, that sounds like a really good title. But I actually had no idea what I wanted to talk about. Just that I thought I'd try and think of some ideas to boost our magic in difficult circumstances. But exactly what I was going to say, I just didn't know. But then inspiration came to me really suddenly on a late night walk a few days ago. I've always liked late night walks because, to walk around in the darkness when there's nobody else there is often very revealing of many magical things. And it's the time when you can very often see spirit beings hiding in the trees in a way that you perhaps wouldn't be able to notice them in daylight. And since I've got my little dog Cersei, I've been doing a lot more nighttime walking because I always take her out very last thing before I go to bed. So there's never anybody else around. And it's a wonderful time to be outside. So a few days ago, I was just walking up the road here and I was, looking at all the Christmas lights, some of them flashing, some of them kind of slowly fading in and out. And there's one lot that's even got some music that go with them that must drive their neighbours absolutely bonkers. But it's quite fun to see how the lights dance along with the music. So there were Christmas lights just everywhere. And then I looked up and I just noticed the quarter moon in the branches of a birch tree. You know how those branches kind of drape across the night sky and partially cover the moon. And it looked like one of those pictures from the cover of an especially kind of witchy or natural magic book. But of course the real thing was so much better, and it really epitomised to me that word eldritch, you know, which we use to describe things which are otherworldly, a little bit hooly perhaps, but delicious and rich in a very special and magical kind of way. And that moment was also that liminal moment just when the frost was beginning to form. So it must have been only just above freezing, just getting to that temperature. And I just stood there enjoying it and, you know, probably inanely saying to my dog Cersei, you know, isn't this lovely? Look at the moon. I often say to her, look at the moon. She often doesn't. But, you know, look at the moon, feel the frost. Isn't this lovely? And as I was standing there, the phrase that came into my mind was the light betwixt the horns. And that's such an evocative phrase, isn't it? You know, it's now become really popular with people following a traditional witchcraft path. I think it's probably been popularised by Gemma Gary in her books about traditional witchcraft, and particularly the Cornish traditions. But, you know, you do find phrases like that in much older literature as well, similar if not exactly the same. And of course that phrase, the light betwixt the horns, it suggests on one level the divine spark between the horns or the antlers of the god. And that's the very being, of course, who in so many mythologies returns at this time as the star child, the child of hope who's born in the darkness and will become the god who moves forward throughout the story of the seasons of the year. And there are lots of different ways of depicting this light betwixt the horns, especially in terms of magical tools, and each one of them has a slightly different feel, and even a different nuance of meaning, which is hard to explain in words, but can perhaps be explained in poetry or in ritual. And the most obvious way to represent this is to have a pair of red deer antlers or some other kind of antlers with the candle at the centre. And of course that kind of image, particularly of a stag with a light between his antlers, is the subject for a lot of pagan art. You see it on cards, you can see them. Sometimes it's depicted as a candle, but sometimes it's the stag actually standing with the sun behind him, so you get that kind of full impact of the solar associations of the image. Another way to depict it, a more perhaps indoors way, though it can be used outside as well, is the hood lamp. Now that definitely has been popularised by Gemma Gary, and of course there are some wonderful pictures of her using her hood lamp indoors in her book Traditional Witchcraft, a Book of Cornish Ways. And the hood lamp, which is an enchanted lamp, specially used for magical purposes of various kinds. The actual horns are represented by the ends of a horseshoe, and the candle is placed on the horseshoe, which is set on usually on some beautiful dark piece of wood which has been prepared specially and ritually for the purpose. And there are some absolutely beautiful hood lamps around, and we have a lovely one in Norfolk. It wasn't something that that we'd used very much before in our tradition, but we were sent one actually by a very kind gentleman in Norway who made it especially for us for the Living Norfolk Magic collection. And when we got it, we were so impressed by the magic of this artifact that we've used it time and time again. And whenever Annette and I have our magical meetings, we light the hood lamp, and it's there on the table, and it's been there on the altar for various rituals, and it's great indoors because it brings that kind of almost like the power of outdoors. You can bring it inside if you do need to work inside, and indeed this particular one works better inside because if you have it outside and it's windy, then the candle blows out quite easily. So that's one way of depicting this light between the horns, which can be really powerful to do at this time. But another way is, of course, to have a stang, which is just a forked stick with a candle or a lamp between the fork in the stick, and that can look very lovely indeed. And those are just wood. I'm just trying to read what Catherine said. Catriona. Oh, I'm sorry you've had trouble with the live, but hopefully you'll be able to watch this afterwards. I know that Chris is going to try and save it. Actually, there is a way to do that, but it's anyway saved on the Stone Circle page, so it will be there for as long as the page is there. Yeah, so the stang with a candle or a lamp is another way to depict that. But also you have the pitchfork, and that's very, very similar. But most pitchforks that you get hold of these days have a wooden shaft, but with metal tines, and of course that gives quite a different energy to the energy of something which is 100% wooden. Of course, there are 100% wooden pitchforks, but there are not so many of them about, and it's easier to get them with metal tines. And of course, those ones that's really old and have been used in the past for agricultural work, they have within them all of the memories of all of the people who've ever used and handled them in the past, and of all the harvests and all of the the hay turning and so on that they've ever done. And it's not that easy, I have to say, to fix a candle into a pitchfork or a stang. It takes a bit of determination and effort to do that. But it is possible, with judicious use of wire and string and melted wax, and sometimes even magical blue tack has been known to be employed for this purpose. But if you want an easier way to do it, I've noticed over the last year or so that the Witchcraft Museum in Boscastle, they're now selling pitchfork tops that you can just put on to the top of a stang or a stick of the appropriate wood that you want to use, and you've got the kind of pitchfork curl. It's quite a small pitchfork, but in the centre you've actually got a candle holder, so it's really much easier to use than trying to fix one up yourself. So they are very good. Hello, Willow. Yeah, nice to see you. Doesn't matter that you're late. As you say, you can always catch up with this later on. So the stang and the pitchfork, they both work really well outside, and you can use them just while you're sitting alone or doing simple work, or you can place them in magical circle or a sacred space for a full ritual working. And if you follow the writings of Robert Cochrane from the 1960s, then you should place your stang or pitchfork or hood lamp in the north. But you might also want to place it in the direction of fire, whether you have that in the east or the south, depending on your tradition. But we often place it in the direction of the current season, so it moves round the circle as we work through the seasons of the year. So now, of course, it would be in the north, in the place of cold and darkness and the chthonic realms. Ah, yes, blue tack, Becky. I'm glad you use it too. Where would we be without it? What did our ancestors do before it was invented? And of course, now the quality of that single light in the dark is very special indeed. And it's so much more intense than when you see it at midsummer, when it's surrounded by leaves and flowers and greenery. But now the divine spark at the centre is most noticeable just at the point when it's most needed. And of course, the things which reflect that light can also bring greater insight into all sorts of problems and issues and things that we're working on. And the reflective objects, of course, they can be human-made or they can be natural. If you're indoors, the Christmas baubles, of course, are designed to do just that, to reflect the light. And of course, they're likely to be inspired by witch balls or watch balls that were supposedly used to keep witches out by showing us our own ugly and distorted faces. Light that would work. I mean, it doesn't work on any of us. And in fact, we all love witch balls, and many of us have collected them. I have a beautiful green one from around about the 1940s, and I don't frighten myself at all when I catch a glimpse of my reflection in there. But of course, more importantly, what these things are doing, they're reflecting back to us the divine light, just like the crystal glassware on the festive table or a gleaming copper cauldron all polished in the hearth. But to go back outside, this light from the stang or the pitchfork is reflected in the eye of the cat who crosses your magical circle, in the shiny surface of the holly leaves, or in the drop of water on the frosty coating on the ivy. And of course, holly and ivy are two key evergreens that we bring in to decorate the indoor environment and to represent everlasting life. And I talked about both of those two plants last year. But when you're thinking about evergreens to represent the season and to rekindle the divine spark, how about trying something different? One of the things that I particularly favour is juniper, and that's really easy to buy from a garden centre, and normally it's not in the same place as the Christmas trees, even though it's a conifer, so they don't put the prices up particularly at this time of year. And juniper plants in the UK do need all the help they can get. There are some in gardens, but they're becoming fewer and fewer actually in the wild. And I have read that in Norfolk, the only native wild junipers are on Scott Head Island, which is just off the North Norfolk coast, and is an amazing and magical place to visit. So what about the magic of juniper then? Well, a lot of people, of course, first think of gin, which may well be, celebratory and of the light. But juniper is far more versatile than that. Herbally, it's an antiseptic, and it's very often used for problems of the urinary tract like cystitis. It can also be used for coughs and various other infections, although it is very, very important not to use it if you're pregnant, because it does have strong essential oils, and that's very detrimental during pregnancy or indeed breastfeeding. But if there are no reasons why you shouldn't use it, juniper berry tea or syrup are also, they're really delicious and really easy to make as well. And of course, in a culinary context, it's very much a seasonal thing, because the jelly that you can make from juniper berries tastes really kind of Christmassy, and works really well if you're not vegetarian, with any kind of game meat, and that's how it's traditionally served. Now, the berries, of course, are technically cones, even though they're so little and blue in colour, and they do look like berries. And you can crush them and put them in incense, and that gives a lovely warm scent, which is also cleansing and of course protective against disease, because the juniper does have these strong antiseptic properties. And you can use the berries as well, like rowan berries, so you can string them and make protective necklaces or protective charms with hagstones on to hang up around the house. And if you feel in need of a little extra protection at this time, you could get some juniper berries and do that, as most of the rowan berries have now gone over or been eaten by the birds. And the wood of the juniper is also really useful, and it's particularly popular in Sweden for culinary tools. So things like butter knives, which the Swedes love, and other serving spoons and ladles and things like that, they can all be made out of juniper. And the reason they're so popular is because they smell delicious and they retain their smell for years and years. I've got butter knives that came from Sweden, a couple of decades ago, if not more, and they still have their scent even after many, many times of washing up. And at this time, certainly in Sweden, maybe in other places in Scandinavia as well, it's very popular to put up lamps that are made of juniper wood, or festive stars that people hang in their windows. And what's so lovely about juniper wood is that it is quite translucent. And when you put a bulb or a candle in it, it really does glow red. It's quite amazing to look at, and of course you get a little hint of the wonderful scent with it as well. And of course juniper is one of those woods which is used in the fire of Azrael, which you can read about in Dion Fortune's The Sea Priestess. And the other woods which should go with the juniper are cedarwood, sandalwood, and some driftwood, because this is usually done on the beach. But to add a little extra light to your Yuletide celebrations, you might try adding some juniper wood to your Christmas hearth. You could put a little bit around your Yule log, and it sparks very bright and very fragrantly as well. And of course, another evergreen of the light, also with a beautiful fragrance, is rosemary. And this is a plant which very often flowers at Yuletide. It can flower at all sorts of times of the year. It's not particularly fussy, but it's supposed to be really fortunate if your rosemary bush flowers on Christmas Day. And often people look at this and they say, oh no, everything's going wrong. The plants don't know when they're supposed to be flowering anymore. And that is the case in some instances, but with rosemary it's not. It's absolutely fine for it to be blooming at this time of year, usually with blue flowers, which is the most common, but sometimes with pink or white flowers as well. And of course rosemary is ruled by the sun, isn't it? So it gives clarity to things. Again, it has that kind of enlightening effect, and it's very uplifting in its scent and in its taste. And of course it enhances memory, and it's been associated with memory for years, because we talk about rosemary for remembrance, and that comes from Shakespeare, but I'm sure the plant has been used in that way long before Hamlet was written. But modern investigation of the plant has found that taking rosemary internally does actually increase the blood circulation to the brain, and that's the reason that it does improve your memory. And I often recommend it to people who are going to take exams. You could sniff some rosemary while you're revising, and then when you actually go in to do your exam, then you should take some rosemary with you and have another sniff, so your brain remembers what you were doing at the time when you were trying to learn whatever material it is you need for your exam. And of course, after Christmas these days is a time that a lot of people do have to do exams. Certainly a lot of the university exams are right after the Yuletide period, so it could be a good one to bring into your life during this time. And another dark plant, a tree in fact, which is also solar, is the bay. And that's a wonderful plant as well. It's a great digestive, and it can also be used to make an oil for arthritic conditions. But of course, magically, it's got lots and lots of uses. The classic one that most people know is the leaf spell, where you get a needle and you scratch your spell into the rosemary leaf, and you can either keep the leaf with you or keep it on your altar until the spell is fulfilled, and then of course you can bury it. And it's also associated with oracles as well. The oracle at Delphi was said to take bay in order to increase their prophetic visions. So the bay also carries with it this light of prophecy. And you can actually put some bay under the pillow to enhance prophetic dreaming. Now, of course, it's not a native tree by any means. It's Mediterranean, but it does grow very well in Norfolk, and that's because in Norfolk the soil is in most areas fairly dry, and so the roots don't rot in the cold of the winter. And we use the bay for our 12th night ritual, because the golden bough, which is given to the champion to fight the Iceni, is actually a branch of bay sprayed gold. Of course, the original golden bough is the mistletoe, but we don't use that for fighting the Iceni. The golden bough, we have the bay, and it's nice and dramatic, and we usually put bells on it, so it makes a lovely sound as the fight is in progress. And of course, those are some plants that you might look at and use. And another traditional way of bringing the light back into the darkness at this time is by using the stored power of the light of the spring or of the summer and drawing on its magic at this darkest moment. Now, one of the ways you can do that, of course, is to gather sproul into a stang or a wand, and the sproul is the energy of the land when it's at its most vibrant. It's what Nigel Pennick also refers to as spearmint. But I love the word sproul, which actually I first got from Gemma Gary, even though I'd used the word spearmint before. But you can say sprowly and make it into an adjective, which is very nice. You can look out across a landscape and say, oh, that's really sprowly. Whereas you can't really say that's really spearminty. It just doesn't sound right at all, does it? So you can do that and have your special stang or wand, perhaps from a solar wood, that you then use at this time of year. Or one of the things that I particularly favour is to have St John's wort oil. And at midsummer, I always make a cold macerated oil from the flowers of St John's wort, because they are especially powerful on Midsummer's Day. And you can use that oil to anoint candles for your midwinter celebrations, and that works very well indeed. Of course, St John's wort oil is lovely for all sorts of other things. You know, you can use it for wound healing. It's great mixed with various things as a liniment for painful muscles. You know, St John's wort taken internally, of course, is a very, very important pain reliever. And you know, people tend to think of it as an antidepressant, but actually, you know, before it became popular for use in that way, it was a very important pain relieving herb. And of course, the St John's wort oil, the pentacle or pentagram shaped flowers, which are yellow and really represent the sun, when you put them into the oil actually turns red, because that's the colour of the hypericin, which is the chemical which is so far known to be the active ingredient of the herb. So it comes up a lovely, lovely red colour, and it's great. It's also used in exorcisms, should you be called on to do such a thing. You know, you hope not to have to do it, of course. Another thing that you can do to capture that essence of summer and of the light is through making ritual wines. One of the most common ones to use for that purpose is dandelion wine, because obviously the dandelion flowers are really very solar looking, even though many people say that the plant itself is ruled by Jupiter. But of course the flowers, you know, they are like little suns, and the wine really does capture that kind of spring light and that essence, and is wonderful to serve in Yuletide celebrations when you're looking forward to the return of that light. But perhaps you feel the need actually for something exotic from warm and bright lands to bring its magic, something that we can't grow here, something that we need to import. And of course, you know, a classic thing there is something like star anise, which is again, it's another antiseptic, and it's also carminative. It's really good for the digestion. And it's wonderful in incense as well, particularly in protective incenses. And it does have a very seasonal, rich and warming smell to it too. And if you want to enhance your magic at this time, putting a whole star of star anise onto your altar can be a very empowering thing to do. It does work very well indeed. Or you might like to have some cinnamon. You know, most people do eat cinnamon at Christmas and Yule in some form or another, because, you know, it's there in traditional desserts, isn't it? And in cakes and buns. You know, and if you celebrated Saint Lucia on the 13th, which Annette and I certainly did, you know, in Sweden the traditional food to have after that is cinnamon buns with currants or raisins in them, and very delicious they are too. But sadly, we didn't get round to making any this year because, you know, we were busy with work and other things. But it's a very warming ingredient again. And one of the very useful things about it for this time of the year is that it actually helps the digestion, and it also helps to balance your blood sugar. So if you feel like overindulging, it's quite a good herb to include in what you're eating. And of course you can buy it as a powder, which is the easiest way to add it to food or incense, or you can buy the sticks, which are sometimes referred to as quills, and they look fantastic if you put them in mulled wine. But also one of the things that I like to do with them is to make festive mini wands. If you get a cinnamon quill and you put a star anise on the top of it, a nice whole one in a good shape, you've got a perfect kind of fun, spicy fairy wand. And they're great to give to children, but I find that adults love them as well, actually. And as well as exotic spices, it might be useful to bring some exotic living plants into your home, and to bring in, again, the magic of their native lands and their own special magic. And it's such a blessing that we're able to buy so many wonderful exotic plants these days. I talked last year, I think, about poinsettias and about Christmas cactus, and all the kind of magic that goes along with those. But another one, which is one of the most commonly given plants as a gift, is the peace lily. And they're great because they last for years. If you give a poinsettia, I mean, it's lovely, but trying to keep it from one year to the next is quite a challenge, isn't it? But a peace lily is so easy and so good tempered. And it's got lots of different meanings, as you can imagine. I mean, just by looking at it, you can tell that there are so many things that you can associate with it. So it's often called peace lily because the flowers are like a white flag of truce. So it can help in putting old feuds to rest, which can be very handy sometimes in families and sometimes even within the pagan community, sadly. So, give somebody a peace lily if you'd like to put a feud to rest. And it's also associated with purity and chastity, of course, because of the whiteness, because it is so very white, so very clean looking when it flowers, and with purity of the soul as well. And according to Feng Shui tradition, the peace lily helps to eliminate negative energy from the home. And of course, it was scientifically shown in a NASA study quite a few years ago now that the plant is able to remove various different toxins from indoor air and to improve the air quality within the rooms of the house. And of course, lots of other indoor plants can do that as well. And in terms of the Christmas story, of course, the peace lily has a strong association with the Virgin Mary. And it's also associated with hope because it brings harmony and it blooms again season after season. And it's not restricted by the season when it blooms. It can bloom at any time of year. And it's also said to be healing and to help promote psychic balance. And again, because of the profusion of blooms that it can produce throughout a year, it's associated with prosperity and also with beauty, which isn't surprising. I mean, very few plants are not associated with beauty. But we say flowers, but of course, the flowers are actually really spathes. And although the flower is called a peace lily, it's not a true lily. It's from the Araceae family. So it's a cousin of the calla lilies that are popularly grown in gardens in the summer. And another thing that you can look at in the peace lily is that the white flowers can be seen as sails, and so betokening perhaps a journey by water. And that always makes me think of that lovely old Christmas carol, "I saw three ships come sailing in," which I used to so much enjoy singing when I was a child. And the plant is actually a native of Colombia and Venezuela, and also Southeast Asia. So it's it's come a long way, and it only arrived in Europe apparently in about 1870. So it's a fairly recent addition to our traditions, which are of course always changing and developing, aren't they? And another lovely plant that you might want to give somebody or get for yourself at Yuletide, which is very appropriate for our theme this evening, is the Amaryllis. And, it's appropriate not just because it's a popular Yuletide gift, but also because it's star-shaped and its Greek name means to sparkle. And the current genus of the plant is called Hippeastrum, which means knight's star or horseman's star. So it's very much associated with the star child. And the story behind the plant is that it is named after Amaryllis, who was a beautiful maiden who fell in love with a handsome but cold-hearted shepherd, Altio. And he did love flowers, even though he was so cold-hearted. And in order to try to win his love, Amaryllis sought help from the oracle at Delphi, who was no doubt well steeped in bay by the time that she spoke to Amaryllis, and the oracle told her to stand in front of her beloved's house with a golden arrow each night and pierce herself in the heart with the arrow. And after she'd done this for 30 nights, all of the drops of her blood which had fallen around Altio's cottage turned into beautiful blood-red flowers, and these helped her to win his love, and her heart was healed. So that's a lovely romantic story. And there are many other colours, of course, available with for Amaryllis, other than just the red. The red, of course, betokens love and attraction. The pink, friendship, and the white, again, purity. So you've got lots of colours you can choose from. Oh, Helen has just said, I still use rosemary oil in exams. It always reminds me of friends on the herbal course. Yeah, so I smile and get an extra benefit. I can't quite read that properly because the thing that's holding my phone up is in the way of the text. But it's lovely to see you, Helen. And yeah, I often think when I think about people doing exams in January, I think of us, all going to UEA to do our clinical medicine exams and such like. So yeah, fond memories. And glad I haven't got to do it again though. Okay, so of course the Amaryllis plant is also associated with strength because it's really tall and sturdy, and with success because Amaryllis did in the end succeed with what she wanted. And just a little tip, if you look after this plant, it can last for years and years and years, and it can produce new little bulbs around the side, so you can propagate from it quite easily, although be warned, you do need patience because they take about 5 years to mature sufficiently to come into flower. But if you give any of these plants that we associate with Yule, it works as a kind of simple spell, doesn't it? And spells have always been part of the celebration of the return of the light. Even, I think, for those with no interest in magic at all, just putting the star on top of the Christmas tree, that again, it's a spell of bringing back the light. And of course, people go around wishing people a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And the X that is in the abbreviation for Christ when we write the short version of the word Christmas is of course the Gifu rune, which speaks to us of the mutuality of giving and receiving gifts, and the whole idea of giving and receiving of other things as well, of duties and benefits. But I think it's interesting. Lots of people don't like it when pagans use the word Christmas, but if you shorten it, you've got a rune there anyway, so I think it's okay. And of course, magical gifts, are great things to use to bring back that spark into our lives. And handmade gifts, of course, give you a particularly good opportunity to enchant things. And very often when people don't want too much stuff, everybody's trying to be minimalist and not hoard things and be a little bit more eco-friendly. Sometimes making some food for somebody is a lovely gift, and all of that stirring and preparing and baking is a wonderful way to stir in whatever kind of lovely, bright, sparkly enchantments you want to use. And of course, any crafts give you fantastic opportunities to do that. For me, that's very often the textile crafts. A lot of the things that I do as Yule gifts are textile. That would be, they might be hand spun. And when you spin something, you can put all sorts of light and energies into the yarn. And as you're stitching things or weaving, you're putting the magic into whatever it is you're making. And of course, if you knit things, which many of us do, and you use magical glass knitting needles, as you're knitting and putting your spell into whatever it is, then the light is glinting off the knitting needles. And of course, there's a well-known knitting spell that most people who knit have done at some point or another, which is to knit a square with glass needles, and as you're knitting it, to put your spell into each stitch, and then to throw it into the fire and let your request go upwards towards the gods. And I know Annie, who's here, she's not fond of knitting, but I believe she has a glass crochet hook, so she can actually do this spell without having to knit, and it's got the same effect. So that's lovely as well. So it works with crochet as well as with knitting. And of course, ritual work is really important for a lot of us as a way of raising our vibrations, our energy, bringing the light through again, and hopefully getting things to run smoothly for the coming season. We do our best. And of course, meeting for rituals has been very tricky in these times, and there are so many that different kinds of rituals that you can do, and I'm absolutely sure that somebody has already thought of a way to reenact the battle of the Holly King and the Oak King online. There is no doubt a way of doing it. And lots of dramatic rituals that you could do. But here's just a really simple exercise, which is lovely if it's done in person and in a large group. But it can easily be adapted to all sorts of situations. And I'm sure that you could actually do it in an online ritual as well, should you need to do that. And all you need is a candle or a lantern, or if you're somewhere that doesn't allow naked flame, then you can use a basket of lights. I've actually used for this a basket of battery operated lights, just in a wire basket. And the first person who starts the process holds the basket or the light or the candle, and you just say, "I am the light." And then you turn to the person next to you and you say, "I give you the light." And then you say, "You are the light." And then the two of you together say, "We are the light." And the next person then takes the candle and offers it to the third person and says, "I am the light. I give you the light. you are the light, then all three people say, we are the light. And so you build up this idea of the light as you pass the candle or the lantern around. And by the time you get to the end of the circle, if you've got a fair number of people there, you've got loads of people saying together at the end, we are the light, which is a really lovely thing to do. And we did it once at Norwich Moot some years ago. And it was very meaningful. It's so simple, but sometimes the simplest of things are perhaps the most meaningful. But of course, if you don't want to or you can't meet with others, then pathworking or visualization is a really nice way to call back the light, to make yourself feel better, to protect yourself, and of course to enlighten yourself as well. So I'm going to do a little path working now. It takes a few minutes to do, and it's just a path working that I refer to as the calling the light path working. But it's something that you can do at this time of year, but indeed at any time of year. And I have at times used it a little bit like a natural magic version of the LBRP, which is the lesser banishing pentacle ritual, and you know, that's very, very popular with ceremonial magicians and Kabbalists, and they call angels on all sides of them to protect and to strengthen them. And many ceremonial magicians do that on a daily basis. But this is something that you could also do on a daily basis if you wanted to. So if you'd like to join me, I thought we could actually do the path working now. So if you would like to, just begin by taking a few moments to relax. Close your eyes. Be aware of your breath, of your inhalations and exhalations. And for every out breath, feel the tension you're holding flow harmlessly from you into the earth. Now check that your feet and your ankles are comfortable, your knees, your hips, your shoulders and arms, right down to your wrists and your fingers. Let the muscles of your neck soften a little, unclench your teeth, and soothe away any tautness in your face and scalp. As you turn your attention within, you find yourself in those inner realms where magic happens and anything is possible. And you look to the east. You stand beside the chill North Sea on a wide but cold, bleak beach, looking eastward out across the waves. The water and the sky are grey, and the land too seems drained of all colour. But then the first fingers of a rosy golden dawn reach out in blessing, caressing the horizon as they spread higher and wider until the first arc of the sun's bright curve appears. Gloom lifts, and gradually the world is bathed in the glorious light of morning and a new beginning. You turn now to the south, to the direction of midsummer, and see the blaze of the midday sun in a clear blue sky. Feel the warmth filling your body and soul with life and energy. Catch the fragrance of flowers and herbs. Hear the buzz of insects, and know that everything is flourishing as the time of ripening approaches. You now turn to the west. Look out from a rugged cliff across the wide Atlantic. The sea is shot with gold, and the orange glow of the sky is streaked blood red as the sun dips ever lower, sinking once more into the waters of the ocean. All is still, and the world darkens. It's midnight now as you turn to the north. At first, you see only the depths of the black, dark sky. But as you stare into the endless distance, you see the points of light appear, distant but intense, and you know that these are the shining ones whose dance and music guide our earthly lives. You look now to your right. It's early evening, and there in the darkening sky you see the waxing crescent of the moon. Sleek, elegant and beautiful, the maiden, the huntress, offering a new start, a time to sow and work your spells of increase. You look now to the left, and there as night fades, you see the ancient one, the waning crescent dipping away as the morning light grows stronger. Feel her power and draw upon her wisdom, her secret knowledge, her harsh truths, her sacred healing. You now look up, and from high above you, the moon pours her silvery light down upon you. The full moon, she surrounds you and fills you with joy and beauty. She is the full-blown flower, the Rosa alba, bestowing her psychic skills on those who are open to her power. Dance in her brightness. Catch her shimmering image in your water bowl. Bottle and treasure this reflected light for future use. Cast your sight downwards now, deep into the earth beneath your feet. It is as dark here as the night sky, but you feel the presence of the creatures of the soil, the shallow roots of herbs, the great tap roots of the tallest trees. As you travel deeper, the lights appear, the gleam of crystals like the shining ones above. Finally, you look inside yourself, and you see the divine spark which burns with an eternal flame. Sometimes it seems fierce and bright, sometimes just a glimmer, but it is always there. Nurture your light, which is the sun and moon and stars and the treasure at the earth's heart. Feel your spark grow and flourish and illuminate your life, bringing inspiration and vitality as you continue along your path. You are changed now, strengthened, enlightened and protected. And as you have changed yourself, so has the world around you drawn upon the virtue of your work. And you become once again aware of your breathing. You move your fingers and your toes, circle your wrists and ankles, and roll your shoulders as you finally return fully to the mundane world and open your eyes once more. So that's just a simple pathwaking that you can do at any time, and include in rituals as well. And we have often included that as just part of a wider and more formal ritual. So mote it be indeed, Chris. And I'm sorry if there are questions that people have written that I haven't answered, but I can't actually see the questions very well because I've got a little frame that holds the phone and it kind of blocks them out a bit. So do forgive me if I haven't seen your questions. But if you want to chat or you have more questions to ask, then please do just message me on Facebook, or you can send me a message on Instagram as well. On Instagram, I'm Val Thomas Witch, but I think most of you have probably got my contact details, or you can contact me through here. And I hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful Yuletide. And if you'd like some more Yuletide things or some more things from me, I do have a Patreon as well, and you can get lots of blogs and short videos for just £1 a month. So if you would like to join me on there as well, that would be lovely. The Patreon is www.patreon.com/ValThomasWitch. So so do join me there if you would like to. And it's been so lovely to see you all, and hopefully quite a few of you will feel confident enough and will be able to join us on the heath from for Twelfth Night.